I don't think a single CEO I've ever worked with ever thinks they micromanage, but yet it comes up time and time again, in my opinion. Hello, and welcome back to Trust the Process podcast. I am your host, Jon Bassford. I'm excited for our guest today, someone I met a couple months back and had some really good conversations with him. So Matt is here with us. He is an entrepreneur and coach who helps business owners create consistent client conversations in a way that actually feels good, especially when everything else they've tried hasn't worked. After building and running two businesses that generate consistent six-figure revenue each month, Matt realized something many entrepreneurs eventually discover. While money solves a lot of problems, it doesn't solve all of them. Matt, thank you for being a guest on the show today.
Thanks, John. Good to be here with you.
So let's dive right in here. And I want you to kind of go into a little more detail about, maybe first a little detail your background in the businesses that you've started.
Sure. Really happy to be here with the audience today. So thank you for having me. So, I guess when I talk about my story, quote unquote story, it started about 10 years ago. I'd been laid off of a job. I was working for a Silicon Valley software startup and, selling major partnerships to the CVS, Target, Walmart type companies. And I knew the layoff was happening. I mean, it wasn't a big surprise, and I was making a lot of money at the time, actually, and I'd saved. So this wasn't. I'm sharing this because, like, this wasn't like. I mean, this was my invitation to actually like slow down and stop and think what I really wanted to do with my life. Instead, I started a sales and marketing agency, helping consumer product companies, going back to an industry that I had left. And immediately I was met with emotional problems. I mean, depression, anxiety, and panic attacks eventually that landed me in the hospital a couple of times. But this journey has been one of this past 10 years has been one of life and career alignment. And about 5 years ago, after doing work, therapy, coaching, and everything on my own, I realized that this was the way it was because of childhood trauma. I, had never been able to really ask myself, what I really wanted because I always thought something was wrong with me. So, as I did the work and kept on the journey, somebody asked me recently, they were like, how have you gotten to this place where you're not anxious anymore? And I'm really not, and then I said, it's kind of what they say. It's the meditation, the yoga, the water, the walking, all of it. It's really come together. My life has changed fundamentally. In the process, I grew my business, the sales and marketing agency, to where I was making, $100,000 a month. But I hated what I was doing. It just became very clear that, God, the universe, whatever you believe in, didn't put me on this planet to sell products to major retailers. And I kind of resisted coaching for a minute, like me becoming a coach. And something changed about, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when I realized how hard this is, like to build a business around coaching. And I was like, okay, so that kind of legitimizes it, like to myself. Like, I guess I told myself, still that, like I think deep wounds were that you can't do what you love and make money from it. Work has to feel kind of miserable sometimes. I don't feel miserable at all in my job. I love what I do. But yeah, I mean, I call myself a lifestyle first coach for the established and the successful business owners. I worked with a couple of, high up executives, but most of my work, it's with business owners that they're doing everything right. Just like, I mean, none of us can read the label from inside the jar. They're thinking that I need more leads. I need more, conversations, when really what it is a lot of times is that we're not exploiting the opportunities that we have in front of us and asking people, hey, John, I like you, can I come into your company and do this with you? And so I really, I help entrepreneurs and business owners really see what they can't see and help them grow their business in a way that feels good to them. And the more I align myself, my business with what I truly like and feels good, the more money I make, the happier I am, and help others do the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. A couple of things that kind of come up, and that is, every time I hear some of the big millionaire, billionaire gurus out there who are, you know, chastise people for working for the man and working in a 9 to 5 job, and why aren't you out there doing this? Entrepreneurship's the way. Like, it's not easy, right? They paint this picture that you just go start a business and it's all glamorous and glorious, and you're going to end up in your fleet of cars and your private jets. And entrepreneurship is hard. Even as someone who's overseen operations for multi-million-dollar companies and organizations, it's a different beast when you are trying to sell and market yourself. From a consultant and coach perspective, for one, there's a lot of ups and downs. I've talked before. Like, I went through a period, about 2.5 years ago, where I was worried I was going to file bankruptcy. I had a bunch of things, personal finance side, business side, that kind of just crashed at one time, and I ended up taking a short-term business loan. Thinking my issue was going to be short-lived, 4 to 6 months, and ended up being longer. And it almost broke me. It's certainly not easy, but similar to you, I'd already begun a path of meditation and mindfulness work, and was able to kind of get through that. And quite frankly, how I did it was just coming to the realization that all my fears were in the future, right? They weren't now. No matter what hit me financially, I could survive that day. If it meant I sold stocks at a loss, I cashed my 401k, whatever it was, sold a car, I could manage any financial burden that came my way, and just started, sitting in gratitude in that. And that's what allowed me to get through that hard times. And, it's always crazy when you kind of shift your mindset and stay in gratitude. The things that you've been waiting on to happen start happening. It's a weird situation. And what got me on this journey, for me, 5 years ago now, I started working with an executive coach, and I thought we're going to be working on marketing and business plans and vision and all that type of stuff. And what we ended up working on was me, and it was the best thing that could have ever happened, was going on that journey.
I totally agree. Something happened to me a couple of weeks, I guess probably about 10 days ago. This is March when we're recording this, and this has been my first $250,000 month. And something happened where, like, after, I think on a Friday this was, that I got the final say, or the final approval for one of my proposals that made this a $250,000 month. And then the following Tuesday, a client that I really wanted to work with, like, and it wasn't a huge contract or anything, but it was like someone that I really cared about. They said that they weren't ready to go forward, and I knew, like, I cognitively knew that it's not about me. They started the conversation, and it was, I go deep. We're talking about real things, and I think this person realized that, like, there's going to need to be some changes, and and again, like, I meet people where they're at. We're not forcing. I've never made anyone cry, but it's like they're gonna have to address some of the things that are holding them back. And I noticed how, like, I barely was able to sit in the celebratory moment of this massive milestone. And I mean, life is a practice, and I don't present as somebody that never has obstacles in my mind, or anything at all. But I am somebody that helps my clients also, and myself, like, realize and intervene sooner. And I did intervene sooner, after like an hour of, like, my autopilot, moping about this thing not going forward, or or whatever stories I'm telling myself.
Okay.
I got back to the I got back to the celebration of, and it's not just the money. I mean, money's nice. It solves a lot of problems, but it doesn't solve every problem. But it's just like, it's the proof of concept, And when people tell me, like, one of my least favorite things to hear is when people like you and I, who only need a small handful of clients, blame the market. Well, the economy's bad. You mean to tell me that there's not 5 people in this world right now that have money, that are not bothered by the market right now? The market's a problem for a massive multi-gazillion dollar company when things, but yeah, for you and I, we don't need 200 clients. We need 5.
Right. Right. So what are I want to separate it out into what you tend to come across, the pain points you come across in your clients. Let's you know, focus on the mindset leadership side of things. What are the typical problems that you see across the board?
You know, the typical problem that I see, which is just interesting, like if you would have told me 10 years ago that I'd be helping people with communication, I would have told you you're crazy. But a lot of it is communication, and I know that that sounds broad and it sounds like, oh, I can just communicate better. No, I mean, we need someone pointing out our blind spots and helping us like identify the myriad of ways that it's presenting in our lives. So for example, some of my clients have businesses. Generally, I work with you know businesses that have 20 to 50 people or way less. Sometimes it's two or three people. But people probably like you and I that are exceptional service providers that anticipate what people need, and we get a team of people and we assume that they're going to be the same. They are not going to be the same. We need to actually manage people, and that does not mean micromanaging. It means like right now I'm hiring someone to support me. I am being very clear up front and saying like you are going to be starting off paid by the hour, and I am paying you to double and triple check your work. So if you send out an email blast in day one and there is a typo in it or a mistake, we're probably going to end our relationship on the first day. Because, like, it's not about the mistake. People are allowed to make mistakes, but you're being paid to not, I mean, like, I have to triple check my emails before I send them out. So I'm hiring you to do that as well. But a lot of people are hiring someone, not having these hard conversations about like what really is expected. And I think everyone I work with, I'm not generally the type of person that I call in is somebody who wants an autonomous team that wants more freedom in their lives. So like they do need people who are going to think on their own, people who are going to jump at the opportunity to make sometimes unlimited amounts of money because they're really given a situation where if bring me in $1 million, you can keep 20-30% of that for yourself, like where a normal company would say, oh well, you can keep 3% of that. No, I'm very cool where if you're scratching my back and helping me out. um but yeah, so it's communication either to the employees that we're managing, to our spouses, our partners, our people in our lives, our mother-in-law who is not respecting boundaries. But like one of my clients the other day, he said to me, he's just started with me, and he was talking about like his he's starting a new business, and he's like, when I wake up in the morning, I'm shot out of a cannon with my kids. And his kids, I think they're around like 12, 14, so they are old enough to be on their own for 2 or 3 hours a day. And like he loves being a father, which is beautiful, and I'm glad that he does love being a father. But I invited him to consider this if he wanted his children to further their long-term goals. They're going to have to step away from some of those short-term autopilot things. So like for him, he's going to have to tell the family, hey family, I'm looking to make this big change that's going to benefit us all, so I'm going to need 2 or 3 hours a week right now to work on my future life. A lot of it is just things like where we are afraid to communicate. A lot of my clients, because we have childhood trauma, we were admonished for our needs. I had a job once where I was told that I just what did they say to me, that no one really likes me because I am too excellence driven, like that I'm too hard on people. And meanwhile, I'm the top salesperson that's bringing in a lot of money, but the team of people couldn't, when I'm selling something and saying like, hey, this is going to be delivered tomorrow, and the team can't do that, and I'm getting the sale only because we're delivering it in the morning, that's a
Right.
problem.
Right.
So a lot of my work has been aligning my excellence and exceptionalism with companies that and people who really um, operate the same way and need help bringing that out. But exceptional businesses, we do excel because we communicate about like what needs to be done. And the other piece is sales. I mean, I have so many clients that come my way and they're marketing, they're doing the webinar, they're doing all of the social media, but they're not looking at like who are those clients that are already in their ecosystem and how are they making invitations to work with them. So that's why I'm launching this cohort in about 8 days now, actually, where it's really working with service providers in like a fractional CRO, chief revenue officer type way, really helping them turn these customers that are orbiting around and helping them actually become high paying clients.
Sure, sure. So you mentioned something there that I want to talk about, which is micromanagement. Now, from my experience in all the organizations I've worked with and CEOs I worked with, I don't think a single CEO I've ever worked with ever thinks they micromanage.
Mhm.
But yet it comes up time and time again, in my opinion. From it could be everything from expecting to have a list of tasks or steps, 10 steps to do this project, and you hand it off to your staff, and if they were to do the task in 6 steps and get it right, they'd still be mad at them, right? Because they didn't follow 10 steps, they didn't follow the instructions. On the flip side, there's also founders and CEOs I've worked with that say things like, I don't want you just to think, I want you to think like me, which is a completely different kind of micromanagement, right? You're trying to dictate how they perceive things and how they solve problems, how they get things done. How often do you see micromanagement being an issue with the leaders you work with?
Often, but like kind of what you said, it's they're not aware of it in the
Yeah.
same way. And what I would say, like one of my clients, she's very, 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 very process oriented. And I, joke, like like I'm not the KPI type person. If you're coming, I come in when all of the strategies and all of the processes and operations are not working because you're simply not communicating what you need. And given that scenario, I would not be, I mean, a very low level person probably needs to be spoon fed the steps. So that works for your, accounts receivable person that does need a process. But your controller, that's not how it works. Your controller comes in and you explain to them the 4 things that you need them to do, and you let them develop the process that works for them, and you don't care about how they're doing it. You care that the end product is delivered right. You're hiring someone to think for you. I
Mhm.
mean, and same for you and me. If you were to hire me in your business, I mean, we're different, and I'm not going to be able to follow your process exactly. And that's where the fracture comes when you're telling somebody to do it your way, when really what you want them to do is to do it their way. You're
Mhm.
managing 7 million things. You
Right.
don't like you're not able to do everything right. You're hiring a specialist to come in and hopefully because they're smarter than you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing I would say is, like, even if you've hired an A team, but everything is still running through you, it's all your ideas, your problem solving, your solutions. You've created a C or D team, right? Because you are not good at everything. You can't see everything. You can't touch everything, no matter how hard you try. And therefore, you're not getting a results because you insist on being part of the process. And I'm in this weird dichotomy because I am an operations guy, right? I love process procedures. I love creating efficiencies, and but I'm also a disruptor, right? So I come in with an eye towards, we can always make this better. These SOPs, these KPIs, they're not static. They're dynamic. Part of when I was W-2 employee and running operations for organizations, my goal was to have conversations with teams, asking them, what would you do different? What do you see as the problem? The number of times CEOs can come into a room with that aha moment that they discovered some problem and they're so proud of themselves. And they go to the junior person, they say, this has been happening. They're like, I know, I've known for 6 months. And what
Mhm.
happens? They get mad at the employee when they should be looking at themselves, as to why didn't they create the atmosphere and the mechanisms for that employee to speak up and bring that problem to light much
Mhm.
sooner and quicker.
I mean, I mean, and they are the problem, I mean, and it's like a lot easier to, to point blame and fix somebody else than to look in the mirror and fix ourselves. I'm sort of in this, deep exploration right now. I've been coaching for about 3 years. And I have like, I don't know, there's probably like 7 or 8 people that have like really raised their hand that are like, I need help. Money's not really, I mean, no, I mean, like nobody's sitting around and saying, I have 20,000 extra dollars to like spend
Yeah.
on something,
Right.
like no matter how much money you have. But yeah, like I have a few people like, and they're just not, like one of them, they said, when I get my next client, I am going to hire you. And he's been, 6 months now. I think that his goal was about 50,000 a month. He's at 20. And so he's essentially lost 30,000 times six, so $180,000. And he's not exactly like connecting like that, that's why you would hire someone to help you. But I think it's different for a lot of people. A lot of people, like for me, it's very interesting talking to you on this Monday. One of the things that I did so I go for a hike normally on the weekends. I live in LA, everyone hikes, but I go like kind of like with an intention on a Saturday or a Sunday to process something that's going on in my life. So probably about a month ago, I went with this query about like, why are people not saying yes to bringing help into their lives? So I'm thinking for myself, there are two areas that two areas in my life that I need some help with. One of them is business. It's become inarguable that I can actually confidently say I am doing too many things that are trainable, and it's just
Yep.
not a good use of my time.
Mhm.
And it's a good problem to have. So I'm
100%.
thinking about this, and I'm like, do I, question whether, hiring somebody, $10,000 investing before they, maybe have a ROI? Do I believe that there's going to be a 10x ROI for that? F yes, I believe that. Absolutely. So I believed that. So I was on a call this morning interviewing somebody else, but I'm hiring for this role. And what's kind of come up, there was a little bit of trauma. I have hired a couple of people in the past. I haven't had bad experiences per se. I mean, many years ago, of course, but like what I really realized was that I need to like everything is figure outable, so like for me, I mean I've had to allocate some specific time to really thinking about this role. What do I need? Being honest. I think I said earlier about, like yes, you are probably fired the first day if you make a mistake that is like I need you to subtract from my workload pretty much immediately. Not a lot, but I want a 10-minute relief. After training you to do something, I'm in a little relief. So anyway, so I decided about hiring this person. And the other area is my health right now. Like I am, summer's coming and I'm not doing great at putting the cookie down. I don't like I'm good, but there's and it was interesting thinking about this and just being like, do I know what I need to be doing? Yeah, I know that I need to not be eating the cookie. I work out just about every day, so it's not that. But and I'm having a daughter in 4 months. My husband and I are having a baby, and I kind of have to like stay alive for the next 30 years at least, if not more. Like it's really important to do that. So it was just interesting, like and the health coach and I are starting tomorrow as well, and I just think like I think that like if we actually allocate time to thinking about these problems, like we solve them. But I think most people don't. They're just on to the next thing. That the COO example that you said, they're not stopping and thinking about like what is wrong? Like why is my team not doing this?
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's
yeah. I mean, one thing I see all the time is like a lot of times CEOs and COOs, they actually know something's wrong. Their gut is telling them something's not right. It's not efficient. It's not effective. Whatever it is, they just don't know what's wrong, and they don't know how to search to find it. Right. Um, I want to bring up one thing. Go back from the beginning that we were talking about, and then I want to dive more into the marketing and sales side of things. Um, Going back to the point where most CEOs and managers in general don't realize they're micromanaging. There's a lot of issues. You and I work with CEOs on that. One of the biggest hardest things for me as my consulting is growing is it's become much more of an executive coach than a consultant because I have to get through to the CEO. I have to get through the founder. I have to get them to see something about their mindset, which is dictating how they're running their operations organization as well as their culture. So how do you get through to a founder or CEO manager who can't see their micromanager or some other issue that they're facing?
well, I mean, what comes up for me right now is doing a better job at vetting the right candidate that works with me. Like um, this morning, actually, it's funny. Like, I mean, I think that honestly, I'm more proud of this than I'm proud of any, like the money success this month. I have a client who is a monthly pay client. Um, I'm cool with the monthly pay thing. It's interesting to see that a lot of people, like, there's a commitment issue. And so they texted me this morning after 1 month, and she said that we're going to have to put this on hold right now. Okay. And it's interesting. It's a very hard project. Like this is like
Mm.
this is not my normal type of coaching. I do like this person very much. I actually have a lot of compassion, and I mean I like this, and I like a challenge. But this is by far harder than most of my clients. So I responded back and I said, well, thanks for texting me, but that's not how this works. And I said, I'm not going to keep you here, but if you do want to break our contract, which she is breaking the contract, I said that we won't, like, we're indefinitely ceasing the opportunity to work together again. And that felt really nice because the old
Mm.
version of Matt probably, I mean, I wouldn't have been like, no big deal, but I probably would have made it more like, how do I help her solve this? I think I did help her solve this. Like, this is, I mean, she can absolutely decide not to work with me again. I'm not taking her to court. I doubt
Right.
I'd win because that's really, she's paid for services rendered. Today is the day that the next payment is
Mhm.
due. But yeah,
Yeah.
like, I mean, my kind of takeaway from this, it's like, huh, like a lot of these monthly pay things that I've done, and most of my business is not monthly pay things, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I do like to offer it. Um, Most of the people that are taking advantage of the monthly pay aren't that committed,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And like to answer your question, like I don't know that I'm going to be able to convince somebody to think differently. I think that that person has to um, I spend my weekends reading and exploring things and challenging myself enough. So when I meet with my coach, which I have a very high touch, high end
Mhm.
coach, I'm I'm primed to be hearing things that I maybe don't want to hear,
Yeah.
or I wouldn't even say that. I want to hear it, but yeah, like you can't make somebody want to help themselves.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I had a recent situation with a CEO where, I mean, just to make a small change in their accounting process procedures took 4 months.
Yeah.
Like multiple memos, multiple conversations, and they would always come back to the dumbest thing. It was, why do I want to pay wire transfer fees? Well, that's what you do when you hire people internationally. That's the cost of doing business. Like, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, I can't help you here. You're gonna destroy your entire accounting system, work more hours, keep making mistakes because you're worried about a $20 wire transfer. I mean, he finally acquiesced, but even after we made the changes, kept going back to the wire transfer fees. So I was like, like, I don't know what to do
It's so
with you.
funny because, like, as a business owner myself, that probably has less money than that man does. Like, I pay a wire transfer fee. It's just part of doing business, and you
Yeah.
get to choose what you worry. I mean, it's very funny that like my mom used to say this, um, about my grandmother. She was penny cheap and dollar foolish. So you're like saving like the pennies here, but
Right.
you're my grandmother went to the casino and she'd lose $300 at the casino, but she wouldn't
Right.
buy
Right.
full price tomatoes.
Right, right. Let's go back to the marketing, right? Because I fall into that, right? I am someone, you and I've talked about this, in the past. I've worked with a lot of different partners, in a marketing sense that haven't worked out. I worked with one for, it should have been a 3 or 4 month thing because the delays on their end ended up being 9 months. It was significant investment on my part, both their retainer as well as the ad spend they expected me to put up. They gave a guarantee on all of that. So that was why I was willing to roll the dice with them. And I ended up getting all my money back when they didn't deliver, but I also wasted 9 months. I mean,
This was
that
someone to help you with your business?
this was a high ticket offer marketing agency. They were to handle the marketing and sales for my consulting, and it was a complete bust. And again, I mean, I got the money back, so like even if I wouldn't have, like, my biggest regret would not have been the money; it would have been the time.
Yeah.
And so after a couple of different partners, and and I'm sure you get hit up, 10 times a day from lead gen companies as well, because they're reaching out to all consultants and coaches. I had to take a step back. I had to say, I need to kind of reassess this myself. You know, I need to make sure that I have my vision wrapped up. I need to make sure I am comfortable and confident in what I'm doing. Need to get back to a little bit of grassroots stuff, and that has helped move the needle for me. Instead of leading with free diagnostics, I lead in with the problem, right? So it's just small tweaks and changes I'm making, right? But it is tough. It's every marketer that I talk to is going to bash everything I've done before, and bash all the attempts I've made. And actually, how many attempts and how many different strategies I've used is the problem. But they also kind of run into the self-ritual problem. But you can trust me. I am finally the one, after 10 failed marketing consultants, in the last 3 years, John, I'm the one who's finally going to get this done for you. How do people like me overcome that?
Well, how many clients, like, what's your capacity?
So it depends. So one part of my business can be just the diagnostics and 12-month plan creation, which
Mhm.
kind of sky's the limit, because I can outsource a lot of the administrative tasks for that. For the consulting side, if I have people I'm working with on a consulting coaching basis, carrying a load of 10 is probably the max.
Okay. So, are you okay if I challenge you?
100%. Fire away.
Okay. I think that everybody, these people that you're hired, like that you've hired or talked to and that have helped you, you're approaching this as a marketing problem. I don't use the word marketing. I use the
Sure.
word business development.
Sure.
And is marketing part of that? Sure. Under the business development umbrella, for me, you have sales, which, marketing is long, sales is short, like for any company. And I recently had I hate the word webinar, but I had a workshop type thing that was much more intimate than a typical webinar. And it was about business development a bit, and everyone's, talking about, it wasn't about business development a bit. It was solely focused on business development, to be clear. And everybody on there is like, well, I'm posting and nobody I mean, it's coming. These are all people who are on my email list. And my email list is highly engaged. I have open rates of 60%. I get, 3 or 4% click through. And I said to them, there were 6 people on this call, and I said, all but one of you, one person responded to that general email. The other 5 were on there because I personally reached out to them.
Sure.
And they all, like, big aha moment, because they're like, oh yeah, like, it's so many of us are like approaching this like we're Procter and Gamble and put a Tide commercial out and like think
Right.
that people are going to go to the store and buy more Tide. That
Yeah.
is not the way this is. We have to be
Right.
making direct invitations,
Right.
talking to people. Like, one of the exercises I take a new client through, it's look at your database, and whether your database, or pipeline rather, we can call it, like, whether it's, I mean, 100 people, pick the top 5 that you want to work with,
Hmm.
that you really, that you deem as, and I'm careful about the money thing, like, everybody has money to solve the problem,
Right.
but there are some people that shouldn't be investing in coaching,
Sure.
or because they can't afford
Right.
food.
Right.
So they're
Right.
probably not the ones you put on the list. But those 5 people that you want to work with, and list out the things that you've done to try to get them to become clients. Most people, one of my, it's well, I had a webinar and a QR code at the end, but like, where is that like direct invitation? Hey, John, like, I actually see what you're going through. I created this program for people like you. Can we talk about this program?
Hmm.
And that's really what I help people with, is really identifying that that we need to be selling to people. And it's not, I mean, and like, this, but like all the mindset stuff comes up. Like, I really, I've kind of done some unpacking of my own recently, and I've done a lot of unpacking of my own, but recently around this financial piece. And like, it made me like, I grew up where like, and I mean, I've always been like like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I've always done really high quality work. When I was eight
Sure.
years old, I was mowing the neighbor's lawn. I was, helping my grandmother out, like cleaning rain gutters, pool cleaning, lawn mowing, all of this. And I remember my dad, who, I could always trust him to be honest, because he was, hard on me. And I remember him saying at a young age, something like, you're doing a better job doing this work than like somebody who is hired, like, like an old, I mean, an adult would do. So I knew I was doing that. And at the same time, so I would go to my grandmother's house and I would, help her out with things, and I'd, leave with $20 probably after a whole weekend's full
Right.
of
Right.
work. And I would come home and my dad would throw a fit and say that it's not fair that I got that money and my brothers who sat at home playing video games got nothing.
Hmm.
This
Hmm.
happened like my whole childhood.
Hmm.
So you think I'm not carrying that over into my adulthood and afraid to like put myself out there and assert myself when I know that what I'm doing is helping people? It's all related. And,
Yeah.
I said this
Yeah.
not long ago at one of my brunch clubs. I host this Friday brunch club. I was talking about this. I don't think my confidence is like much different. I mean, I'm a low confidence person because of what I've gone through. I don't
Yeah.
know that I've changed so much other than I've learned how to work with low confidence.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
being myself.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and along with that, there is some marketing, as you would say. I would call that the nurturing part of the business,
Right. Yeah.
And what I've noticed, I do a weekly Substack, and it's been interesting to like watch. And I've been in sales and marketing, but as you identify, doing it for yourself is a little different. And
Cool.
what I'm noticing, it's like how cool that I'm doing this consistently. Am I
Mhm.
perfect always? No, I don't always
Sure.
publish the Substack on Sundays, but I mean, I pretty much always do. I was on vacation a couple weeks ago. I did it on Monday instead. But then I'm also noticing other people who are not being consistent, who are not reliable, who are not showing
Mhm.
up.
Mhm.
And that's marketing in the
Yeah.
way I look at it. It's nurturing, but like when you stop looking at marketing like it's going to solve your problems and start looking at it as more as what I call a digital business card,
Yeah.
that's when the shift happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you bring up the childhood stuff and how that comes into how we perceive money, how we work, how we live. I was in a mastermind, and it was a husband and wife team, and the husband was kind of just a savant about a thing that they would do. He would coach people on this, but in one of our mastermind in-person events, he did it kind of rapid fire with everyone at the event. And what he would do is pinpoint an origin story, something from your childhood, early development years, and tie that to how you view sales and marketing.
Hmm.
And I don't want to go deep into this just because of the sake of time, but he pinpointed something from my childhood involving my dad after he left, and how I felt, how I perceived his relationship with us as being, we were more of a inconvenience to him. It was an obligation, not a, and always a sacrifice, an inconvenience. And so after a series of conversations, and this all happened within 15 minutes. He goes, "So how do you feel like? What's going through your head when you go to sales and marketing to someone?" I was like, "I don't want to inconvenience them. Like, if they don't want my product, that's fine. Go away. Like, there's other people to see, and I don't want to, I don't want to bother them with my stuff. And so, I am someone who's constantly trying to find, that new and different way to do this, that's going to bring people to me versus me having to go chase them. And chase is probably, again, a loaded word that I'm using for how
Hmm.
I feel about it versus the reality. But I have been, again, slowly tweaking and changing how I'm doing this to make it more organic, to make it more me. So I don't feel salesy, so I don't feel like I'm chasing, so I don't feel like I'm inconveniencing people, and really just driving home, you know, discovering their pain points, and tapping to that early in the process, so they are coming to me, and then we kind of do that deep dive and discovery call, and get to a point to where that sale is easy for them on their side, but also easy for me, and not feeling like I'm inconveniencing them.
Totally. I mean, let me ask you this, like what feels most organic to you? Like if you could snap your fingers and have, clients coming to you doing something that feels organic, what would that be?
Yeah, yeah. I think one thing you said earlier is a key point, which is finding the right people, right?
Hmm.
If I, like what someone I have going through my sales cycle right now is, he responded to something about misalignment amongst leadership and organizations,
Hmm.
and he's struggling with that right now. And here's the crazy thing that we discovered in this process. So I was offering my decision making alignment diagnostics, which goes into how people view the organization, which determines how they look at resources, implementation, strategy, and people, how they govern all those. And his team was actually incredibly aligned in how they view the organization and how they did decision making. The problem was, he wants to innovate, grow, and change, and they're all in resource protection.
Mhm.
So that was the misalignment. So his team was aligned on misalignment. So tapping into that, like learning that, getting him interested enough to take my free diagnostics, and then having that time with him, and where he was like, John, he's like, you pinpointed our pain problems like to a T, and you're absolutely right that how my team views the organization is not going to be what gets us to the future. So, now we're at the process of like, all right, here's what we can do. Like, this is what I do. I help lead change. I help lead from a governance perspective, from a culture perspective, leadership and operations has been what my skill set has been. And so I'm in this great place where I'm adding value to him every step of the process. We're going through it, whether he signs a contract or not, he's getting value from this, right? And that's a really good place for me to be coming from. Obviously, I hope that he signs the contract, but like that's it feels good to me, right? I don't feel like I'm selling. I don't feel like I'm pushing. I am helping him lead through a process of discovery. He's getting value from it, regardless of what happens at the end.
I love that. And it's funny when I started what I call the Friday Brunch Club at my home about a year and a half ago. I Yeah, I mean it's very funny. I was going through this transition from my sales and marketing agency to coaching, and it's been a harder journey than I expected. And I'm also careful saying that because it's not like I didn't know that starting a business was hard. I mean, it's not about the business. It's really about who I've had to become. Thus the health coach, thus the all of these things that I work with people in very high capacities that like I need to be like I've needed to step into a new pair of shoes for
Right,
myself.
right.
So I look around my, life, my house, and I'm like, okay, what can I do to like stand out? I'm very big on the if you can't be better, then be different. I don't know that I'm, the best at anything, but I can certainly be creative and be different. So I like cooking. I'm good at it. I'm very good at cooking, and I have I do have a nice house. It's interesting going through a transition where money is not coming in like it once was when you have a massive house payment. So I'm like, okay, let's use what I have right now. So I have my cooking skills, the house, beautiful dining room, and I like having deep conversations. So I started what I call the Friday Brunch Club, where on Fridays I invite 7 other business owners into my house. And I acknowledge that this might be weird for some people. For my husband and I, it's not. We're totally fine.
Right.
I've never had a problem. Like, there's not been anybody who's come that's like been weird. There are a couple people I probably wouldn't invite back just because of like, you know, but nothing weird at all. And at this point, I've done more than 30 of these. I've had more than 300 strangers through my door, people that mostly I met on LinkedIn. And It's been amazing to like become myself. I've grown from it in a lot of ways. And it's also been one of my big lead gen sources as well. But at the same time, when I look back to this at the beginning, I remember thinking very clearly, Matt, you're playing the long game. I have some money, I'm not rolling in it. I do have to work, but like I had enough where I was able to like again be different and not be so transactional and actually really focus on building a long-term relationship with people. And amongst that, like I've gotten better about identifying, being clearer about like who is actually, potential to be a client. And I have an intake form now. Specifically, I just started this recently where I'm asking people tastefully, are you looking for a coach? There's a few options and it's clearer. I mean, it's not so aggressive, but it's been interesting, like just asking that question now. I have people that are saying, I've had some random people that are
Sure.
saying they're actively looking for a coach.
Yeah.
And this is, so it's I would invite you, to really think about like what is that thing that you can do that is different. And and my husband does ad sales for a major company, and it's funny, they have a bigger expense budget than you and I do. And it's like, I can't be taking people out to $1,000 dinners too easily, and that's fine. Like leave that to the big companies. What I really need to do is something different, and I
Right.
do something very memorable.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No. It's something that you talked about struck me, which is kind of you're. I'm gonna use my own words here, but you're being vulnerable about like how you are as a person. Like you're not great at everything and this that and it's and especially doing this podcast, I had to learn that like I have to be a little vulnerable, like talking to you about my marketing process, right? And some struggles I've had with that because I don't want to come across seeing like I don't understand marketing and sales. It is just a different beast when you do it yourself. I have been the VP of operations and COO, VP of business development for organizations where I've created amazing growth driven strategies that no one, thinking outside the box, like you, just being creative and thinking outside the box, create these massive changes or small changes with massive impact for the organizations. But when it comes to me and my business, it is harder, and you got to tap into people who have an objective view at this, who understand you, what you do as a business. Of course, that subjectivity has to be there, but has an objective view into who you are, what you're doing, and how to get to the right place to where it can be, you can do that organic selling. You can do the selling and the marketing that is natural to you. And I think, that's what I keep on working on doing is finding that, because being an authentic person is like a core value of mine. And that high ticket offer marketing company I talked about, like they were saying things in the pitch deck and in their marketing that made my skin crawl.
Mm.
I'm like I would never do this in a million years. But what I would always get back from is, look, this is the dark art of marketing. We know what we're doing. We have years of experience and research into this. You have to trust us.
Hmm.
And I'm paying you the money, so like I kind of have to, right, to some degree. Once the contract's been signed and the money's been sent over, so it puts me in a. So I've learned to really vet that in the beginning, right? No matter who I work with, like this has got to be something that I still control. That's authentic to me, and will allow me to sleep at night, and get on to a call knowing things haven't been oversold,
Hmm.
everything been promised I can deliver on, and the services that were offered are things I offer.
It's so funny. I mean, I am maybe offline. You can tell me what company this is because I've worked with a couple of situations like this. One of them stands out where it was like a networking type business development type group. It wasn't crazy expensive. It was maybe like $5,000 for the year or something. And they said to me at the beginning, they were like, you have 48 hours where this is $5,000, and if you don't decide in 48 hours, and it's 10,000. And like for me, even when I have a new client, like of course I like a new client, but when somebody says I need to sleep on it, I'm like, I would too. Like I sleep on things before. But like the health coach situation, I mean, she was cool. She was trying. I mean, obviously she would have liked to have signed me up immediately because people think about things sometimes and they're become their own worst enemy. I flat out told her, I said, I really think I'm going. I mean, I think I said I'm going forward with this, and I need to sleep on things. And I did, and I went forward. Um, so all this to say, we need to do it our way. And
Right.
that's exactly the kind of work that I do with clients. Like I don't have, and I think people like sometimes come to the call, they're like, what's your process? Like, what are the 5 steps? And I'm like, I mean, I don't know if you're coming in with, you might be coming in with that financial trauma stuff from childhood. You might not be. You might have a really good business development system and you need help closing. You might have no leads. You might have, a team that's performing well and it's your marriage that we need to talk about. Or you might have a great marriage and you're not being a great leader. And like when I look back to like the impact or the growth that I've had, and I've spent now over $250,000 on coaching and
Right.
like my
Right.
personal growth journey,
Hmm.
90% of that, 90% of the benefit I got was working one on one with somebody. It
Hmm.
wasn't from like being shoved into a program. And I've seen this time and time again where it's like, we're telling people that, this is how you do it. And one of the things that I joke about, if I never step foot into a Marriott conference room again, I will die a happy person. And I went to go see Elizabeth Gilbert. Do you know who she is? Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Yeah.
So she gave this talk like in LA, and I went there a few months ago, and like I swear to God, I'm not sure that she rehearsed it. I mean, I guess she might have, but like it was so good. She was
Mm-hmm.
casual. There wasn't slides. There wasn't a key. And I'm not saying that there's not a place for the
Sure.
keynote, but I really don't need to see a keynote ever again. Like, I actually want to hear the unpolished person, and I look at myself like I'm wearing a. I like humans that are casual, and that's why I love this podcast medium like this because we could just get to have a conversation that's not so polished. So
Hmm.
all this to say, like, I just more and more become myself. I present this way. And the harder we stop trying to be someone we're not, the
Right.
more we're attracting the people that actually want us for us.
Yeah. No, this sounds like a great place to start. Stop, not start, stop. So any like if you could boil what you do or the biggest advice you can give into one sentence for the CEOs, founders, managers, leaders, whoever's listening, what would that one piece of advice be?
This is really poetic. I love saying it like this. It's like mic drop moment. At the end of the day, I am helping people become themselves. Sometimes again, oftentimes for the first time ever. I bring up, like Devil Wears Prada, that movie with Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep is a hard woman to work for, and she has people lined up to work for her in that scenario. So you can be whoever you want to be. You can be the leader that says, I don't want to talk to my team more than once a month because I want you to be autonomous. You could be the salesperson that, closes, that, threatens your client to buy now in 48 hours, the price doubles. Whatever feels good to you, we can reinforce a system and an operating pattern that works for that. So you're not having to be anybody else other than yourself. And a lot of us never were able to be ourselves.
Well, Matt, before we leave, obviously we're going to put your information in the show notes. But if you could just briefly tell people the quickest way to find out more about you and what you do and how to get in touch with you.
Cool. You are talking to the person that answers my emails. So Matt at mattgerlach.com. I respond to everything. Would be happy to entertain any sort of conversation. If anybody's curious just about my journey and how I've, um, navigated this world of living without anxiety and worry and just trusting. One of the things that you said earlier that I wanted to comment on. Like, we do need to trust and surrender. And one of the clients I started working with recently, he was like trusting and surrendering before he made that clear offer. Like, he was like, so what we worked on is like, you need to make it really clear that, like, hi, I want to work with you and this is the thing. And then you trust and surrender. But, but he was trusting and surrender before like dropping off a business card and trusting and surrendering. But yeah, I mean, if you're, and I, of course, I love, clients. I am actually at capacity right now, but I am opening a spot in mid-April. So there's one opening, and I'm launching this cohort that is called the Consistent Client Conversions. That I am just about at capacity for that too, but I'm going to be opening up another one later in the year. So would love to just hear from anybody. Sorry, that was a long goodbye.
No, all good. Obviously this podcast is called Trust the Process, where we're diving into what people do and how they do it, and whether or not that's leading to things. And one thing that keeps coming up, if people are watched a few episodes already, just the mindfulness stuff is always what comes up. And I think there's another important piece that came up in this is the authenticity of yourself and tapping into who you are, and just finding the creative ways to be yourself but still drive things forward and become successful with it is vitally important in trusting your business and trusting the processes, sales and marketing processes of your business. And so thank you for a very engaging and thoughtful conversation, Matt, and we'll have to have you back for another episode sometime.
Thanks. Nothing good comes easy. I think that that's important to remember. So it's a process.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Matt. Talk to you soon.